and welcome to the channel. My name is Joseph Carroll. I write under the pen name J.R. Carroll, and today we are finally getting to it. People have asked me when I was going to do this and waiting for it, so today we are going to finally do the Dresden Files, Stormfront, Book 1. And for you know those of you who are just finding my channel and listening to me for the first time, you won't know this, but if anybody knows me, has seen any of my videos, I am a massive Dresden fan. It's good stuff. I lurk in all the comments, so any booktuber that has done a Dresden Files review probably in the past 2 years, I'm probably somewhere in their comment section. So I've been trying to read a myriad of different books over the last year or so, and I've probably read more more books in the last year and a half than I have in the last 10 years. I've been writing a lot more, so I feel like reading different types of books will really kind of help me out. And Jim Butcher is one of my biggest influences. So coming back to Stormfront, it is kind of universally thought of as the weakest installment in the Dresden Files. But for me, and I agreed with that, but coming back to it now, Jim Butcher's just a great writer. His prose are great for urban fantasy. Now again, everyone's gonna think that if you're writing, archaic prose because you're writing from a medieval style book, well, those prose are gonna sound so much more beautiful, and they do, but that's not what Jim Butcher's writing. I mean, this is urban fantasy, so you're gonna use modern language, and he uses it so well in this. Now, this is a detective noir style, kind of a 40s, 50s, type, book where Harry Dresden is the only openly practicing wizard. You can find him in the phone book. It's, is what he says at the beginning. And as we are introduced to Harry, he lets us all know that he's kind of a very blue collar guy, doesn't have a lot of money, is late on his rent, and all this stuff. He drinks stale coffee. But early on we find a woman, Monica Sells, comes to him and asks him to find her husband. Now Harry tells her, well, why don't you go to the cops? If you need an actual private investigator that does those type of things, I know somebody who can help you out. And after going around with Harry, she finally kind of spills it that he was into magic, black magic, and his personality began to change. So Harry, and she offers Harry $500 up front. So Harry's like, okay, well, I'm at least gonna check this out. I'll do the best I can do for you. And then right after he agrees to that, another main character for the book and throughout the series, Lieutenant Karen Murphy, calls up Dresden, and we find out that she's the head of the special investigations unit for Chicago, which they get all the weird and seemingly unsolvable crimes kind of just thrown at them. And she is smart enough to believe in magic and the supernatural, so she calls in, Harry from time to time to help out. And it turns out when Harry gets to this, this murder scene, um, there were two people who had been, making love, and their hearts had been ripped or exploded out of their chest. And she, wants Harry to figure out who could have done this, how it could have been done. Um, and this is where we find out that Harry is under what's called the Doom of Damocles. Um, in his past, he'd done some things that have, kind of put him on a wizard's, probation. Um, and this is where we are introduced to Morgan, who is a warden of the White Council. And the White Council are people who are over all magicians. And, not magicians, but wizards, real wizards. And, he tells Harry that he believes that it's him that did it. He's going to find out and prove it, and he will execute him for these crimes. So then, Harry has, a bunch of different angles popping in and out at him. He's wants to help Monica Sells and get paid. He wants to help Murphy, but in helping Murphy, he also has to, figure out who the killer is to get, Morgan off his back. And so, he starts looking for all kinds of help. He has a skull whose name is Bob, and he's one of the best characters in all of fantasy. He is a spirit of intellect who is trapped inside or uses a skull as his domicile, and he can only come out of it when Harry allows him. But he's worked for dozens of wizards, so he has all this knowledge, and Harry's using him to kind of figure out, how he can, figure out who this is and stop him. And we meet a we meet a vampire who is Madame Bianca. Now, she runs a prostitution ring, and she's one of the head vampires for in Chicago. And Harry kind of goes up against her to try to figure out if she knows anything. And of course, they end up, fighting, and he gets on her, hit list, which, will probably come back to haunt him in the later books. But we find out that there's this drug that's been circling Chicago recently called Third Eye, which apparently gives you, the wizard's sight by drinking it, and then eventually you go crazy. But Harry, is kind of gets tied up in all of these different, angles and different people, and eventually they all kind of weave their way together towards the end. Now, I wanted to kind of keep this spoiler free up until this point, so any of you who haven't read the book, I don't want to spoil anything for you. So all of that gives you kind of a good idea of what's going on with the book. And I would love to hear your comments. And again, we are doing a giveaway at 200 subscribers. So like, comment, and subscribe, and you may win the next prize that's coming up. So we're going into spoilers now. So continue at your own risk if you haven't read the book. But from here, we see Harry, implement Tutu'd, the Dewdrop Fairy. He brings him into the fray to go and find him information. And then this is where we find out that Victor Sells has been doing some things at his lake house in Michigan. And from there, you know, Harry starts putting all the pieces together, and but yet he's still not this is a big thing from Harry going forward into the other books is, Karen, asks him for the information she needs to go and bust, whoever's doing this. And Harry thinks she's not ready for this type of fight. So he withholds information from her so that he can go and take care of it himself. Well, Victor Sells kind of starts figuring out that, Harry's on his trail and sends a demon, after Harry. And it is it's a crazy scene, and Harry ends up, nailing this thing with a lightning bolt. And then, Karen goes to Harry's office looking for him, and this is where Victor uses a spell to bring a amulet of a brown scorpion to life, and this thing, continues to grow, ends up stinging Karen while she's there, and Harry gets there just before it was able to do any more damage to her, and she's kind of out of it and thinking that he's still he's the bad guy, and Harry ends up fighting off this scorpion, and at the end of this this thing kills it with the elevator. He gets in this zone where his friend Karen is hurt bad. Morgan and the White Council are coming, and they think that he's the guy. Victor's gonna kill him on the next. He's using the thunderstorms to power his spells, and on the next thunderstorm, Harry knows that he's the guy. That he's gonna get hit with it. So, he's like, all right, I can either just lay here and die, because I'm so weak and tired right now, or I can just go after him. And that's exactly what Harry does. He runs, straight to the lake house, and, we get to see Harry's wizard sight for the first time. And, he paints this horrific, but also kind of beautiful picture of what everything looks like through the sight, and ends up fighting Victor Sells at the lake house, breaking the circle, and Victor Sells tries to, use the scorpion trick again, but only this time with a dozen scorpions. Harry knocks them off the balcony, then ends up fighting with Victor Sells, and Victor Sells summons the demon again. Harry's able to use his skill, even though he's weaker right now. He knows a lot more than Victor Sells, and is able to turn the demon back on him by using his name. And so Harry ends up knocking both the demon and Victor Sells off the balcony down into the pit of scorpions, and finishes them off. And as Harry's seemingly dying from smoke inhalation, he thinks he sees Morgan coming, through the fire, and he's like, oh well, isn't this great? I've survived all this, I'm gonna get killed, for doing the right thing. And the next thing we see is Harry waking up after Morgan had given him CPR, and we get Dresden being snarky to him as he is about how now you have to tell everyone that I was the good guy. And as this book ends, it almost feels like it could have been a standalone if it had to be. Um, everything kind of gets cleaned up. Harry gets off the doom of Damfleas, and he starts mending his relationship with Susan and Karen. But this is just the beginning of one of the best series of all time. So if you liked this review, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.